Thanks for joining Let It Fly Disc Golf, and in this video we're going to talk about the forehand. Stay tuned.
Let it fly into the sky, let it glow into the night, let it take flight, just slip away, it'll let you
Okay, so
find
why
your
do you
way.
need to develop a forehand? Well, we were in Fort Worth, Texas for the Disc Golf South Expo, and we hit up a bunch of courses. Here in Abilene, there's a couple holes that allow you to throw off the tee with the forehand, but in Fort Worth or in the DFW area, there was a lot of shots where it required you to throw a forehand. Even if it's just like a little 150 upshot or something like that, developing a forehand makes you twice as deadly if you do have a backhand just as well. What I'm gonna do is show you how I've been developing a forehand, and if you've known me for a couple years, you've probably never seen me throw a forehand, and that's just because I knew I didn't have a forehand. But I'm actually starting to get better distance, and we're going to talk about that today. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is just the grip in general. So you have several different grips out there. You have the power grip, which is usually by Paul Macbeth. You have the stack grip, right? Two fingers on top of each other. I believe, who is it? Like Nate Sexton does the where he places the fingertips on the rim, and that's how he gets it there. There's the one stack. For me, I think what really helped out is one, I do like to go with the stack grip, but there's a little bit of adjustment that you have to go into that just as well. But I would say play around with all the grips that you possibly can and figure out what feels comfortable to you. I went to this, but I think this probably adds a little bit more torque than what I need with your arm speed and the actual flick of the wrist. So those two type of things need to be married so that this way you're actually getting the spin on the disc. If your arm is coming through too fast but you're not putting enough spin, it could be the grip, and try to work around with that. So for me, the stack grip, we know that we don't want to place our fingers on the flight of the plate. We want to be on the rim, okay? We don't want to push with these fingers on the side of the rim. We want to place our fingers on the pad. So right here where this little crevice is, you're going to place your finger right in there. And then you're going to place the other one on top. The other one can rest on the flight plate and just kind of push them together. The other important part is back here in the palm of your hand, we want the disc to be snugged in there. Now, some people say crank it in there. For me, I don't know. I think it just depends. I'd like to have a loose forehand grip, and a lot of people are probably going to be like, well, it's got to be really tight and really snug. For me, maybe that will develop over time, but for right now, as far as what we're going to do here, a decent grip, but actually putting the disc in the palm of your hand, right back there, and in this case, the thumb on top. I'm not pinching down, but it's enough to stabilize it, okay? It's not all the way in. It's just kind of like sitting right under it, right on top of this knuckle right here. Now, I think one of my downfalls when it came to the grip was I was really extended. I think Brody Smith talked about this on one of his live videos, where he says to put your grip in there, but then you want to pull your fingers back in. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to get like a, I guess it kind of acts like a spring versus it being long. I don't really have this right here sitting on the actual flight plate. It's just mainly these two front fingers, all right? And that's pretty much it. These two fingers right here are actually just kind of snugged against there. Kind of play around with them. I think some people even do it like that, but for the most part, I leave mine front and then just kind of push with this finger on the outside of the flight plate. I do want to take a second to let you know that we are on our way to 2,000 subscribers. Make sure you subscribe. We will be doing a 2,000 subscriber giveaway. Who will win a shirt, hat, some discs. So definitely subscribe, hit that notification bell so that this way when we put out a video, you'll be notified when we put out a video. All right, other than that, thanks a lot. So now let's talk about the arm. I don't think anybody's ever actually mentioned this. I don't know. Let me know in the comments, put it down somewhere below. But people talk about the elbow getting close to your body. And some people take that like too literal and go, you're not supposed to throw like this, right? We know that. But the idea of it is that we don't want our elbow to be so far away from our body because that's going to put a lot of torque on our shoulders. I think that's another reason why I stopped throwing forehands, is because even like one little forehand, my shoulder would immediately hurt. So what I started noticing is that trying to keep the elbow close, not completely pinned to the body, but close enough, okay? We don't want to be too far out. And who knows, maybe over time, my videos will probably say, well, you want to keep it a little bit further out, and that will give you more snap. But for now, what we're doing, just keeping it close to the body, and we're not doing this. There is an actual drive with our elbow to give us a snap. But for the most part, we're not doing this. We're just allowing the elbow to get close to the body and then drive through. This kind of makes sense because it feels like it protects your actual shoulder. And this is a lot of the parts of my videos, is protecting your body, okay? Now the other part of the arm is we want to stay loose, okay? So I've been learning as I've been teaching and doing field work and helping out others, is a lot of disc golf comes down to your twitch muscles. So there's like, you have your strong muscles, but then you have your fast twitch muscles. And for a forehand, you have to be loose in order to get the snap that you're looking for on a forehand. So you can't be super strong and like muscle down and then just trying to force your wrist over. We want to stay loose. Okay, right? It's everything. All this is dead, and I'm just trying to focus on driving the elbow first. Now, it may not actually look like on the videos where people are going like, you know, that's super flexible. If you have that flexibility, great. That's going to get you some distance. But for now, if you're throwing a forehand, be super loose, be fluid, and protect yourself. If you're doing any of this stuff in the videos and you feel some pain, immediately stop. Most of the time you should be recording yourself. That's exactly what I say all the time. But for the most part, you want to stay loose, and if you're feeling good, then you're doing it great. If something's hurting, you need to slow down and think about what you're doing. You're probably putting too much into it. You're probably putting too much hip rotation, and you're putting a lot of torque on your elbow or your shoulder, and you're probably too far out. Okay, so let's move on to a drill that helps with feeling how loose your arm needs to be. So I'm thinking that I've seen this on a video with Scott Stokely. And of course, everybody knows Scott has a really, really nice forehand. He's really smooth and he's upright and throwing a forehand. And that's great. That works for him. For me, I have to put my body in a specific angle in order to actually throw it pretty nicely. But what I've been doing is, in my backyard, I have my net up where I usually throw. I'm standing like maybe about 40 feet away from it, 50 feet away from it. And what I'm working on is this, an overhand, like forehand roller, okay? And if you're loose enough, you'll feel like a pop, okay? Now, the reason why this is good is because you're shifting your weight and you're allowing your arm to be loose. So I have a couple discs in my hand. I have a couple putters and some mid-ranges. Don't bust out the drivers or fairways because they're too heavy for the most part. Not too heavy, but they're just really, really sharp. We want something a little bit with a blunt edge so that this way when we're practicing out in the field or whatever, it's not gonna go that far. We want to be facing our target. And this is where, in this technique, it works really well because we're cutting off our hip rotation. Right now, we're just trying to feel the arm. So you're here, and what you're trying to do is imagine throwing the elbow first. Boom. Leaving this loose with a decent grip. So I have a decent grip. You can see it's not coming out of my hand. I can feel the disc trying to rotate like this on the front of my I guess, ring finger. I got my stack grip. My fingers are on the side of the actual rim. I'm pulling them in just a little bit to hold on to them, and I'm pinching with my thumb. So I'm working here, boom. See how the elbow is coming forward? Then I'm going to dive down. Now I'm not throwing really hard. My feet are a little off-centered. This foot is pointed straight, and I'm just trying to feel that. Now I'm not going boom, I'm going fast twitch. That has nothing, no pain on my shoulder or my elbow because I'm staying pretty loose. If I stay really tense, right, that has like no pop. It's still gonna go somewhat far because I'm throwing like this and getting down to the edge. But really you want to just feel fast twitch, boom. So you're here, just like that. And I don't care if it's like going like a big arc. I'm just trying to drive it into the ground and let it roll. From another angle, here, my foot is here. I try not to like, some people go like, leave it completely this way and that way. I feel like it kind of like plays around with your hips. I like to be like this foot a little bit that way and not so much parallel that way. So it's kind of like that because I want to feel the weight shift. Boom, on the front foot. Okay, so once again, we're just focusing on driving the elbow first and then letting the hand come through nice and smooth. And that's the feeling that you want with the forehand. Some people talk about like loading the wrist back. And the reason why I don't like that is because it's hard for me to load and then drive the elbow. Okay. I like to leave it a little like upwards. And so that this way, whenever I drive the elbow, you see how it like loads back for me? And it's because this part right here is really loose. Okay. Now if I load it, try to do that with the elbow. For me, it's super awkward. But I try to keep it here, keep it straight. I'm not going like this. Okay, I don't want to put too much torque on this part, but it's straight, and then I'm just driving and allowing the elbow to push through and then come through with the rest of it. So here, just like that. So if you made it this far, we are not going to be throwing forehand disc off the tee. Most of the time your holes are going to be too far and they're going to require a lot of power. And if you haven't gotten timing down, you're really going to hurt yourself. So where we're going to actually thrive in learning our backhand is with an upshot. So let's make it out to the field and we'll talk about that. So here's where you're going to be actually learning how to throw the forehand. So we talked about coming here, right? Now what I want you to do is, I like to stay as close to this as possible. So throwing like this, and once you get the feel of it, as far as, okay, I can get my elbow to go forward. Now what you're gonna do is take that same angle and you're gonna lean. That's important, to lean with the shot. I think that's where I started hurting my shoulder and my elbow because I was too far upright where I was trying to throw like this. And some people can. Some people can throw like that where they're just here. But for me, I realized for now that I feel more comfortable here. Now, the other important thing is the selection of your disc. So for now, whatever you need to, if you have a lot of spin and you're finding yourself turning your disc over, think about where you're finishing. So just like a backhand for me, you want to finish like this, right? Where your nose is pointed down. So with the forehand, it's the same thing. I finish with my hand this way. Now, some people talk about like, oh, you rolled your wrist, right? But for the most part, I try to keep my hand like this. Not like where I'm trying to turn my whole arm, my forearm over. I'm trying to just keep it straight and then finish like this. So if you're coming through and you're going like that, then try to maintain that same angle and then just finishing this way. As you can see, my whole arm didn't turn like this. The other thing is, it's important for upshots not to stand so much like this, where you're sideways and you're like, I'm going to turn my whole body, because that's going to put too much torque on your actual shoulder and you're going to throw it way too far. So just to learn the motion, try to point towards the target, and then at that point get in a comfortable position. I'm facing my target, and then go for the throw. We're taking out the hips for this part, so that this way you can just learn the actual motion. So I'm here, and sometimes this takes a little practice, and that's the reason why we're out in the field. Okay, so I'm here, I'm going to, and I like to set up. The setup is a little different for me. I like to get here. Some people say like get back here already, but I like to stay here because like I said, I want that wrist motion. So whenever I get here and I drive the elbow, I start to feel the disc, and it basically gets it in the position that I need. But the key, for instance, I'll do it for the channel, but I'm not going to lean over. I'm just going to focus on that. Not too bad. It did put a little bit of torque on my actual shoulder. So on this one, I'm going to lean a little bit more over. Little shaky, but that is because I'm not trying to drive it like crazy. I'm just trying, and that's where the like fast twitch muscles come into play. Same thing there. Putters are a little bit harder to actually throw. So I'm gonna try to do like a fan grip, pull my fingers in, and then stay loose. And as you can see, I'm like throwing them way too far. They're like, you know, this is only like maybe 100 and maybe about 100 feet or so. But the nice thing about this is once you can actually get that feel and feel where you need to actually be leaned over, so that this way you protect your shoulder, we're still driving and keeping the elbow close to the body. But once you actually start figuring it out, then what you want to do is you want to see how slow you can go with still getting enough spin on the disc. So all those are a little too fast. Same thing there, a little bit faster. But being out into the field and knowing, okay, maybe I don't need a driver this close. Maybe I can go with the mid-range or something like that. I think go through all your discs. You're gonna find out which ones come out of your hand a lot smoother, and those are gonna be your forehand discs. Another good reason to learn the forehand is because sometimes you're stuck in a specific position where all you have is just your wrist. So let's say that you can't go like full, bah, you know, because you're gonna end up hurting your hand, and all you have is this. And I mean, we're out in the middle of nowhere, but just imagine yourself in, you know, trees and limbs and all kinds of stuff, and you don't have this full range of motion. You only have just the wrist. You'll realize that just with this much, you have a lot of power, because you're putting so much spin on the disc that's all you need. So I'm just here, and that's all you need. Okay, last thing I'll say about the forehand is with these little upshots, remember that we're not trying to get so much torque on it. But for now, when you're going out and playing and you're actually throwing a little here and there, utilize those like extra shots to pick up your disc and throw it with your forehand just to see how far you get. For me, I'm starting to notice that I can be pretty far to get a decent forehand for an upshot. It's not ready for off the tee, but it's getting better. So I think for now, if I can execute it, this is probably my favorite forehand upshot. And the way this works is I have some trees over here, but I have this big opening here. What I want is I want the disc to come out of my hand, and I want it to travel this way. Right now I'm throwing a hex, and for me, the hex and probably the Berg X. The hex and the Berg X are my two favorite forehand upshot discs. People like zones. Sal likes the zone. DuPont likes the zone. But for me, it's been a hex, or in this case, a berg. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give it some air. I'm not trying to go forward and keep it low. I'm trying to give it air so that this way it has enough time to fall out of the sky and come this way. All right, so let's see if I can execute it. I'm aiming for something up, whether it's imaginary or whether it's something physical. So maybe that light post or the telephone or the power post, the power lines with the actual little thing, I'm going to try to hit there. And so instead of me going here, I'm going to stay a little upright, but I'm also still keeping the elbow, still firing the elbow, but I'm trying to throw up there and not out that way. Ready? Maybe a little high, but still worked out. Let's try it one more time. I have my method. Same thing. And that's nice and floaty, but it allows me to still utilize a spot, because with the backhand, I'm not looking at my shot. And even if I am doing an upshot, I've been known to like throw this way instead of that way. And that's where, you know, leaning over and getting the skip. But with a forehand, you're seeing your shot and you're just trying to execute that way. If anything, you're probably gonna put too much cut on it, and that's probably the worst thing that can happen. Versus, I'm not gonna early release it that way and I'm not gonna hit this tree because I have this giant gap for that. All right. Well, that's going to be it for this video. I do want to thank everyone for staying around and watching. Leave it in the comments if you have any feedback as far as the video or maybe something I left out. For the most part, remember that this video is not to show you a power forehand, but just to start utilizing a forehand. Don't forget we have merch. Check that out below. That helps support the channel as well. Other than that, that's going to be it for this video. Keep up the good work. Get out in the field. Let it fly. Peace.
Let it fly into the sky.